Look closely at any typical classroom, and you'll find that about 1 in 5 students, 20% of the entire student population, has dyslexia. Yet millions of these students sit at their desks every day, completely undiagnosed. Without a clear diagnosis, a very real biological reality gets misunderstood. Educators and society at large often mislabel these struggling students as having a behavioral issue or a lack of intellectual capability. The assumption is often that the student simply isn't trying hard enough. But their struggle to read has absolutely nothing to do with laziness or a lack of effort. It also has nothing to do with physical vision problems, and it is certainly not an indicator of low intelligence. Dyslexia is highly specific. It is classified as a specific learning disorder, and it is focused entirely on the mechanics of reading and language. The root cause is a neurobiological difference. As this diagram shows, a dyslexic student's brain physically processes incoming language using entirely different neural pathways than their peers. Because this invisible gap between a child's high intelligence and their actual reading output goes unrecognized, the student starts to carry a massive, silent emotional weight. In early schooling, this neurobiological difference first shows up physically. A child will look at a page and have a hard time connecting specific printed letters to their corresponding phonetic sounds. That early disconnect makes reading an incredibly slow, labored process, and it leads to frequent, frustrating spelling errors on daily assignments. Those academic hurdles quickly trigger a behavioral shift. The student begins to actively dread reading aloud, doing whatever they can to avoid being called on in front of their peers. This graph plots academic confidence over time. As daily struggles pile up, confidence trends downward. Eventually, a second line representing severe anxiety aggressively spikes upward. At this crisis point, anxiety completely overtakes the student's confidence, severely damaging their overall self-esteem. An unaddressed neurobiological reading difference rarely stays an isolated academic problem. It aggressively snowballs into a full-blown mental health crisis. Treating a crisis of this scale requires a dual-pronged methodology, one that actively supports both the physical brain and the emotional mind simultaneously. The first prong is academic intervention. Students need structured literacy instruction, utilizing highly specific frameworks like Orton-Gillingham approaches to effectively teach the brain how to decode language. Alongside specialized instruction, schools must implement classroom accommodations that remove unnecessary friction, like granting extended testing time and providing audiobooks. The second prong is psychological support. The process begins with securing an official, professional diagnosis from licensed clinicians and psychoeducational evaluators. Once diagnosed, dedicated therapy is necessary to repair the deep anxiety and self-esteem damage the student accumulated during those years of struggling in silence. Neither intervention works in isolation. Academic support cannot cure severe anxiety, and psychological therapy cannot teach a dyslexic brain how to read. Modern, comprehensive support systems are stepping in to solve this exact dual crisis. MentalSpace School's K-12 mental health program in Georgia serves as a prime example of this model in action. They deploy a massive clinical infrastructure, assigning networks of culturally competent, dedicated therapist teams to individual schools to provide everything from regular counseling to crisis intervention and suicide prevention. By utilizing same-day teletherapy, they completely remove the traditional logistical barriers for students who urgently need evaluations and continuous care. They also solve the financial barriers. Support is covered by major insurance providers like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, and Aetna. And for Medicaid patients, the cost is exactly $0. This chart shows the measurable outcomes of combining mental health and academic support. The data reveals an 89% improvement in student attendance. Next, we see a massive 92% reduction in overall student anxiety. Finally, the third column demonstrates an 85% rate of overall family satisfaction. When education systems successfully diagnose the physical neurobiology of the brain and simultaneously support the emotional reality of the mind, students with dyslexia stop merely surviving their education and start truly thriving in it.